I'm super excited to announce a new experience on CreativeLive. It's called Fast Class. You've told us that you're busy and sometimes it's hard to dive into a full class from start to finish. So essentially, we're now giving you a shortened highlight version of our top CreativeLive classes. You can always dive into the full class with 5, 10, or 15 hours of great content. But now, if you're just looking to focus on a few of the highlights or want to be able to skip quickly to something that really interests you, you can now get a shortened fast class version of that class. We're also thinking this might be able to help you explore a new craft and save time while doing it. This is a great tool to curate your learning experience to help create the life that you seek. So you're probably thinking, great, how do I access this new experience on CreativeLive? That's easy. All you have to do is be a subscriber to the Creator Pass, and then all this is yours. If you're feeling isolated and looking for creative connection, try tuning into creativelive.com/TV. That's where we've got a 24/7 live stream from the kitchen counters.
I can do that backlit shot that I really like to do.
From the studios and living rooms of many of the world's top creators, where we're doing musical performances, Q&As, cooking shows, virtual book tour events, drawing, spoken word poetry, and more.
Life passed me by waiting for an invitation when the world is greater than my nation or my occupation. Be someone you've never been. You feel all that adrenaline? It's medicine.
It actually helps me feel like my days are more purposeful.
I hope that out of this deep pain will come some collective growth.
Dive into CreativeLive TV today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Creative Live. I'm your host, Kenna Klosterman, and we are here at Creative Live TV, where we are bringing you live events streaming from our guest homes, their studios, their kitchens, their living rooms, and I'm coming to you from my home, obviously, as well. We hope everyone is doing well. Again, we started Creative Live TV about a month ago as things broke out as part of the stay home and sheltering in place, in order to give you a place to connect as well as be entertained, inspired, and learn. So I'm super excited today to have Jesús Ramirez, who is going to do one of his Copycat Wednesdays, where he's going to start from scratch and recreate a TV show poster, and hoping that you will follow along as well. So as I introduce him, first I want to let you know that you can participate in the conversation. Again, one of the goals here in Creative Live TV is to connect you all. So whether you are watching on our website, creativelive.com/TV, or if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, on Jesús's YouTube channel, the Photoshop training channel, you can participate and comment. Let me know where you're tuning in from. So Jesús, welcome to Creative Live.
Hi, Kenna. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be back here with you. Last time we spoke was at during the podcast. We Are Photographers, which came out about a month or two ago. I already forget. I don't even know what day it is.
Time is a weird thing right now, Jesús. Yeah, that's right. If you guys didn't know, Creative Live has a podcast called We Are Photographers that I host, and I had Jesús on. So we had a lot of great feedback about your episode. So be sure to check that out if you have not already, everyone.
Well, and also thank you for having me, because I'm not a photographer, so it was cool to be on a photography.
But you are in the photography world.
Yes.
And obviously look at and work on images all the time.
Exactly, right, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about Photoshop Training Channel, and a little bit about yourself and why you started Copycat Wednesday, and what are the other things you do on the Photoshop Training Channel. Congratulations. You have more than 1 million subscribers, which is a huge accomplishment. So again, if you're not already, be sure to subscribe to the Photoshop Training Channel.
Yeah, well, the Photoshop Training Channel is a YouTube channel. Pretty clever name, right? Photoshop Training Channel.
That's right.
But I do. No, I'm just kidding. But no, the Photoshop Training Channel is a YouTube channel where I teach people how to use Photoshop. I mentioned that I'm not a photographer, but if you're a photographer, that doesn't mean you can't watch my channel. I teach a lot of skills that could help out photographers. I teach retouching. I teach photo manipulation, color correction, pretty much anything that has to do with Photoshop. My background is in design. I was a graphic designer I've been a graphic designer, still am, for over 15 years now. So that's where my professional background comes in. And for the last maybe 5 or 4 years, something like that, I've been focusing a lot on the teaching side. I'm an Adobe influencer, so I do a lot of Adobe events. I do CreativeLive and other similar events. And yeah, if you want to learn more about how to use Photoshop, you can come into the Photoshop Training Channel on YouTube, my website. And you were asking about Copycat Wednesday. So as much as I like teaching Photoshop, I like to also work on projects. So I thought, what would be a good way of work on a project, but that also helps people learn how to do something in a fun way? And I'm a big fan of movies and TV and all sorts of things. And I always see graphics, whether it's a poster, an album cover, a book cover, or maybe just a style on, on a certain TV show or movie. And I often do it for fun, where I try to recreate it. And I thought, oh, wait, I could do something like this on my YouTube channel, where I see something that I enjoy and recreate it. So it serves two purposes. It helps me just do something that I would do anyway, recreate something for fun, and also think of how someone could recreate it using Photoshop. Obviously, a lot of the movie posters, book covers, and obviously TV shows, they don't necessarily use Photoshop to achieve a final effect, but the goal of Copycat Wednesday is to use Photoshop to achieve a final effect. So that's where the idea came about.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to have folks be able to follow along as well. Open up Photoshop. You're going to see a project, from start, hopefully to finish in this time that we have here. Mm-hmm. And again, if you are wherever you're watching, you can come and join us in the conversation. CreativeLive.com/TV. We've got Lisa Carney, who is watching.
Ooh, and hi, Lisa.
Says, 2 of my favorite people. Well, thank you, Lisa.
Actually,
likewise.
Come and watch my apply rim light in Photoshop tutorial, because I learned that from Lisa. So Lisa is one of the people that I always mention that I learn by watching her. So Lisa, you're awesome. Thank you for allowing me to use that tutorial. Lisa and I did a compositing stream maybe about 3 weeks ago on Adobe Live. So Lisa is always very fun. So hi, awesome. Lisa.
So tell us about what we're going to create. And I just want to let everybody know we're not actually able to put the final image up, but you can go to, just for release reasons, or but you can go to our social media, CreativeLive's Instagram account. And if you look at the stories, you can see the image that we are going to create. Plus, Jesus, you're going to show us your final image. So let's hit it. Over to you.
So we're in Photoshop, and this is the image that we're going to start with, and the final image is this. It's it's similar to the Prodigal Son TV show. I've never seen it, so maybe you guys in the chat could let us know if it's any good or not, but the poster's awesome. And actually, the first time that I saw that poster was during the stream on Adobe Live with Lisa Carney. She showed it and was talking about this particular movie show poster. But the point is that I thought it would be a great thing to recreate for a Copycat Wednesday. So I'm going to do it live with you here. Also, if you're interested in older Copycat Wednesdays, you can just go into my YouTube channel. I only have 2 right now. So I have actually 3. This will be my 4th. I have one on recreating the running scene from the Flash TV show, recreating that dark green moody look from the Lightroom splash screen. and the perfume movie poster. And pretty soon I'm going to create a playlist. I was just waiting to get at least 5 videos done before I created a playlist, so you guys can check them out there. So Copycat Wednesday, I publish one every day. Now, if you want to follow along with me, you can download these photos from Adobe Stock. All you need to do is just type in this number on the search, 302-160421, and it'll bring you up to this page and you can download it. The second image I'm using is this one. The number is 291414928. And again, just type that number up in the search and it will come up. And what you need to do is obviously get those images into Photoshop, and you will need to crop them. I already gone ahead and cropped the image out so that we could just save a little bit of time, since I have a little under an hour to recreate this effect. So the first thing that I'm going to do is start making a selection around the main subject, which is this gentleman here. And in the latest release of Photoshop, you now have something called Adobe Sensei, which is Adobe's artificial intelligence. It uses machine learning technology to find the edges of things and make a selection. So instead of wasting my time with the quick selection tool and clicking and dragging, all I'm going to do is go into select and click on subject. And that will just make a selection out of the person here. And I actually don't want to use a layer mask. I would rather use a vector mask for this effect, just to give me a little more flexibility with the editing. I'm only using the selection as a reference so that Photoshop could generate a vector mask for me. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be a lot faster than starting from scratch. So with that selection active, what I'm going to do is go into the path panel. And from here, you'll see this little icon here at the bottom, this make work path icon. Don't click on it, just actually click the first time, click on it so you can see how it generates the path. When you are working with vector mask, you usually want to have the fewest amount of points as possible, these little dots. So you want to be able to make that shape with the fewer amount of points. So if you create a vector mask and it has a whole bunch of points, or a path rather, it's not a vector mask yet, what you need to do is hold Alt on Windows, Option in the Mac, and click on that vector path icon, make work path icon, and then just increase the number. The lower the number, the more points you'll get. The higher the number, the fewer points you'll get. So in this case, I'll try 6, press OK, and that looks pretty good. Again, it's not perfect, but it already got us pretty far into the work here. So with this layer active, all I'm going to do, first of all, I'm going to duplicate it because I need another version of that layer. So with the duplicate layer active, I'm going to hold Control on Windows, Command on the Mac, and click on the new layer mask icon to create a vector mask. So see, he doesn't have a background anymore. And the reason that I'm using, again, a vector mask is so that I can have more control when I make adjustments. And you'll see why in a moment. So with the vector mask selected, you could also use the Curvature Pen tool, hold Control on Windows, Command on the Mac, and click on the path. And you can just click and drag these points to adjust them. See that? Adjust these points any way that you want, like so. And then just obviously spend some time fine-tuning the edges of your mask. If for whatever reason the subject that you're selecting has blurry edges, maybe there's some sort of depth of field going on in the photo, you can increase the feather in the properties panel, like so, to blur the edges of that mask. And it still keeps it editable, but in this case, I'm just going to keep it razor sharp. And this is just the main image here. What I'm going to do now is go into the background because I want a clean plate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load this as a selection. So I'm going to hold Control on Windows, Command on the Mac, and click on the vector mask icon to load it as a selection. I want to make sure that it catches everything. So you see how there's some hairs here, part of his shirt's not really selected. So I'm just going to go into Modify, Expand, and just expand it by like 10 pixels. We'll see how that works. Maybe even another 10 pixels. And just make sure that everything is selected. And if you still don't have it, use the lasso tool, hold Shift, click, and drag to add to the selection, like so. And I'm sorry, I know I'm going super fast, but I want to try to show you guys all the steps. This is recorded. If you have any questions, leave them in the chat. Kenna will ask me. And but yeah, I'm going pretty quickly because I want to show you just as much as I can instead of just spending time fine-tuning things that don't really matter. But anyway, with this original background active, I'm going to click and drag it into the new layer icon to duplicate it. And then I'm going to go into Edit, Content Aware Fill. Content Aware Fill is this really cool technology that allows you to look at an image and then Photoshop generates pixels based on the pixels around it. So in this case, we were able to remove the person like that, and it looks really, really good. I'm just going to press OK, and now I have basically an empty background. And it's not perfect. You can see that I missed a couple areas here and another one here, but that's okay. That may or may affect the composite later on. I'm not sure. So just to avoid problems later on, I'm going to select those two layers, press Control E, Command E on the Mac. And I'm probably not going to name all the layers now to save time, but I do have a habit of naming my layers. So I'll call this one Clean Background. And now that it's one single layer, what I can do is just go into the Patch tool, click and drag, and make a selection like so, and then just click and drag and sample from another area. This really doesn't bother me because his body will be covering it, so we don't need to worry about it. Cool. So now I have a clean background and him in one layer. What I'm going to do now is work on creating those ribbons on his face. So if we look at the final image, you can see how it's basically a ribbon going over his eyes, over his mouth, and then like the caps of his head just popping out. So how do we achieve that effect? Well, the first thing that you need to do is with a layer that is not anything that has a vector path in it, just like a regular layer, select the Curvature Pen tool, and then you can spend some time, creating your mask like so. And obviously I'm going fairly quickly here. Again, I'm using the Curvature Pen tool, not the pen tool. The reason that I like the Curvature Pen tool better is because it's easier to edit. See how I can just click and drag on these points? And if I want to create a sharp corner, I can double click. It makes a sharp corner. If I want to add a point in between two vector points, I can add one and click and drag. So it's really, really useful to edit a vector path. So I enjoy it a lot. Also, something that you can do with the Curvature Pen tool that you can't do with the other tools is that if you select the point and you hit the delete key or the backspace key, it removes that point without breaking the path. If I were to do the same thing with the pen tool, it actually, I still have the wrong thing selected. It wouldn't necessarily do that. So I actually, not the pen tool, sorry about that. I'm talking about the wrong thing. With the direct selection tool, see how I have the direct selection tool active and I can edit the path? With that point active, if I hit backspace, it breaks that connection. See that? So that's why I don't like using the white arrow tool, the direct selection tool, to make those adjustments. But anyway, so now that you have your selection active, what I'm going to do is create a new layer, and I'm going to bring this up above him. And then with that mask, I could also do the same thing. Control Alt on Windows, Command Option Delete on the Mac, and see I have my top part, right? So then I could come in here, and again, I'm going super quickly here. I could come in here and now do the other part, like this part here, like so. Make my selection, spend your time fine-tuning it, of course. And there it is. So see that? I have now that part. Pretty cool. And then I can do one more down here. And again, sorry guys for the speed, but now I have another part. Pretty cool. Now, so I on this second mask, I'm sorry, on the original mask, notice that we have his face still. We don't want his face to show up. So we want his face to be hidden. So what you can do is just select a bunch of these paths and then just delete them. And I know it'll break the path like I mentioned earlier, but then you can just come in and with the Curvature Pen tool and click on both points and it'll join them again. And what you can do is just make sure that you have the face right around there, and when you enable the other parts, that's more or less the result that you'll get. Now, I know I went super fast, but I already planned in advance, and I have a file where I'm pretty much at that same spot with nicer curves. So I didn't do anything that I didn't show. All I did is took my time to get it more accurate. But as you can see, that's basically where we were. So I put everything into a group. I have a background group, and I have the face here like so. So see the head, just like I had it there, and then just the bottom part there. Cool. So that's the magic of television, like in the cooking shows, you know, when they pull out like a pizza from the oven and it's already cooked. That's basically what we're doing here. So let me not save this, and we'll continue. So now that we have the shapes created, the next thing that we need to do is bring in the second face, you know, because it's really two people. It's not the same person. You can actually do it with the same image if you want. If you're using your own images, you can do like a selfie up against the white wall, and then do everything I did here and just duplicate that same face and put it inside the other. But in the original TV show poster, and how I'm going to do it today, is with two people. So you can use two photos or one photo of the same person. It's totally up to you. But what I need to do is just bring that photo in, and the photo is of this guy in a similar position, obviously. And I'm just going to crop the image like so. We only really need his face. We don't really need anything else, so we don't have to be too precise, something like that. And then I'm going to convert it into a smart object so I can work non-destructively. In case you don't know, a smart object is a container that can hold one or more layers, and you can apply editable adjustments, distortions, filters, transformation, pretty much anything. So that way, if you change your mind, or your boss, your art director, your teacher, somebody tells you to change something, you don't have to start from scratch. You can always make an adjustment. So with this smart object, I'm just going to click and drag it. Oh, actually, you know what? I think I made a mistake. I should have not cropped the image, because if I crop the image and I drag it into a new document, you can see that I still see the rest of the person there. So what I really should have done, let me go back, is create a selection like so, create a layer mask, and then convert that into a smart object. And when I drag it into a new document, I only get the face, not the rest of the body. So we don't need to worry about all those other pixels. And if you need those pixels, remember, this is a smart object, editable. That was the key word. So let me see where it went. Let me just drag him out here. He doesn't need to be in that group. So basically what that means is you can double click on the layer thumbnail and it's there. And watch this. If I unlink it, I can move it around and the rest of his body's still there. So we didn't really lose it. It's just saved and hidden. But when we're working on the main document, we don't have to worry about that giant picture. We just worry about the cropped area. So I'm going to put him right here, right in between that group. And what I'm going to do is, actually, let me show you a trick. Sometimes when you're working, especially with like, if you like right now, I have my Wacom tablet like right here. I'm not using it now, but I'm using a mouse. And sometimes if your hand is too shaky and you're using a Wacom tablet and you're trying to drag it in between two layers, you might accidentally drop it into a group and it just gets annoying. So what you can do is use the control key on Windows, the command key on the Mac, and click on the bracket keys. Those are right next to the letter P in North American keyboards. And you can just see how it just goes down and up. So command, control, and then use the bracket key. So I can just move it down in between where it needs to go. So what I'll do now is I will place, you need to find a reference point. And in this case, I think the best reference point is like right here, right under his chin. And what I can do is press Control T, Command T in the Mac. If you're working in Photoshop 2020 or newer, if you're watching this in the future, you will need to enable the I call it the pivot point, but the technical term is a reference point. Call it however you like. The point is that this little dot here is disabled. I don't know why Adobe decided to just disable it in the newest version of Photoshop, but that is unchecked, so you can't see it. So if you click on this icon, it comes back. And I can click and drag it right here. And what that does is that makes it so that I can rotate using that reference point if I hold the Alt key on Windows, the Option key in the Mac, and it rotates from that point, or I can scale to that point. See that? See how I can scale to that point? So let me just press Escape because I didn't really want to rotate it, and I'll do that again. So I'm just going to use this part here as the reference point, and I'm going to click and drag down like so, and you can decide how big it needs to be. Maybe something like this would work. And click on the check mark to commit the changes. So now what we'll do is we'll mask him out. He doesn't have a mask yet, but we'll use exactly the same technique. Select, subject, Adobe Sensei will find the edges. Looks fantastic. I can go into the paths panel. Again, just click on this icon. It'll create a vector path. From the layers panel, I can hold Control, Command on the Mac, and click on the new layer icon, and boom, we have a vector mask. Super, super cool. There we go. See? So that's, we're almost there. Let me see what the next file is, because I forgot, because I just don't behind. Let me see what I did here. Okay, cool. So basically that's where I'm going. I just wanted to remember, because I want to work on the file that I really spend time on. So I'm kind of going in steps here. So the next thing that you guys should do is, you could just, if your image works perfect at this point, just stop and don't do this next step. If you want to have a little more control, what you can do is duplicate this layer like 2 more times, right? I'm clicking and dragging into a new layer icon, but you could also press Control J on Windows, Command J on the Mac. And, like we'll just work on this first one, right, on top. Make sure that the vector path is selected, the vector mask, I should say. And then with the Curvature Pen tool, just come and make make sure I'm in the right area there. Just come and make a selection like so. And then on this drop down, make sure you select intersect shapes, and see how it just kept the top part. And then I'll do the same thing here. Go into this shape here, make sure that the vector mask is active, and I'll keep this bottom part here, his eyes, the guy in the back. See that? Just come back around like so. The key for this is to have intersect shape areas active. And then boom, we're gonna do that one more time here at the bottom. And we're just gonna do this super quickly. See, I'm going quickly, and like I'm still doing a decent job. So you guys could spend some time. Actually, see, I said that and I made a mistake. So, so since I made a mistake, what I'll do is I'll just undo. See, because I didn't do what I told you guys to do earlier, which is click on the this vector mask. So you need to have your vector mask active. So the blue lines need to show, and then it'll work. See, if I was just doing a regular Copycat Wednesday, not doing it live here with you guys, I would have just gone back and edit that out. But anyway, so now that I have all these shapes here, see, it makes up the image. But the reason that I separated them is now I can control them, right? Maybe I can go a little bit higher. See that? I can go a little bit higher on this one. This one maybe go a little bit lower. You have total control of how you place your images. See that? Super, super cool. So I think that's where I'm at over here. Yeah, actually, look, it's not too different. I actually kind of like the one I did here better, but the other one's already like ready to go. So I'll close this one, and we'll just continue working with this one. Let me see where this one is going to end. Okay, cool. So now that we have this, all we need to do is create the illusion that these caps are, have a 3D depth to them. So we're just going to fake that. And the way that we're going to fake it is by going into this. You can disable this one back here. It's okay. Actually, you might need it. So what you need to do is from this behind face group, that face that we just worked on just a moment ago, we're going to create a new. We don't need to create a new layer. Let me undo that. Let me just go into the pen tool, and we can create a path that just sort of makes it seem as if it's just filling in. See that path there? And I can maybe click and drag here to rotate it. And I'm not using the Curvature Pen tool, which is why I made that little weird turn. So maybe something like this. And then I can go into the solid color fill layer, and it fills with a color. What color should we select? We can select the shadow. Like, just use some of the skin tones that are already found in the image. Just find the shadow that you think you'll like for the inside of the head. So maybe something like that. Press OK. And now I can you can do two things. If you really want to have total control, just click on the group, something that is not a vector layer, and then do the same thing on this side here, like so. And then do the same thing, solid color, and press OK. Make sure that that's under the main face, and also that it's under the face behind the guy. So now it just creates that illusion that there's something back here. See that? And actually this one has a darker color. So let me just select this one there. Just try to make all the colors the same so that when you start adding shadows, it's easier. And you would just repeat the same process with these shapes here. Same process. So just to save a little time, I guess I'll do one more just to show you guys. So what you need to do is, again, click on on anything that is not a vector layer. In this case, the group. I'll click on the background group. That way it creates it on the layer above. And then just think about how it would look if it was actually like a ribbon coming around and you see the inside of it. And then create a solid color fill layer. Use the same color as before. Press OK. And there it is. It just looks like there's a ribbon going in. And actually, if you really wanted to, you could just make a shape here instead of a path, and then you could start doing your shape, and then it just applies the color right away without going into the solid color fill layer. If you're wondering why I didn't do that from the beginning, is because I was too lazy to go into the options bar and change it over to shape, but that's another way of doing it. As you guys know, in Photoshop, there's a lot of ways of doing the same thing, but there you go. Same difference. So let me just open up the file where I had finished those inside shapes. And if you notice in this new document here, same thing I did with you guys there. There's those shapes right there. See that? And I called the group inside shapes, like so. And if you're wondering why I didn't do one in this ear, is because I was really trying to be true to the original, and the way the perspective matches in the original, you couldn't really see the top or bottom. This is not really a perspective class, but if you think about how there's a horizon line, right, your eye level. And if something is right at your eye level, like the camera I'm looking into, I can't see the top or the bottom of the camera because it's at eye level, but I can see the bottom part of the things above there, and I can see the top parts of the thing below. So that's kind of how you have to think when you're compositing these things. You have to think of the perspective in the camera and all that. But that's the reason why. In this case, I wasn't paying too much attention to the perspective. So some of these things may not be 100% in the right perspective, but that's the reason why I didn't do it, in case you're wondering. But anyway, so now that we're in this step, what we need to do is add some shadows into the image. And actually, just so I know how fast or how slow to go, Kenna, how much time do we have? Do you know?
Yeah, we're only at 3:30, so you're good.
Oh, perfect. I can slow down.
You got plenty of time.
Perfect. What I'm going to do now is, with these shapes and also the behind face, we're going to add some shadows. And what I'm going to do is just create a new layer, call it shadows. And I'll clip it to the layer below. Control-Alt-G, Command-Option-G in the Mac. Clipping mask or clipping a layer simply means that the layer below is going to control the visibility of the layer on top. In other words, the visible pixels from the bottom layer are going to only reveal, those are the pixels that will be revealed on the top layer. So that means that if I were to come in, so since I clipped this shadows layer to this behind face group, that means that when I paint, I'm only going to paint on that face, right? And this is probably easier, or not easier. It's probably, you'll probably get better results if you have a Wacom tablet. But when I present, I feel so uncomfortable dealing with a Wacom tablet that I've always presented with mice. So if you see me using a Wacom tablet, you know that I'm doing, like professional work. And if I'm using a mouse, you probably know that I'm teaching. I don't know why. It's something in my head. But anyway, so with the shadows layer active, what you need to do is find, again, a dark shadow in the skin tone. So maybe like one of these darker colors here, and let's see if that works. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and paint in a shadow. By the way, I'm using hardness set to 0, and I'm just going to paint. And see that? I'm just painting my nice little shadow here. Beautiful little shadow. I'm like, what's his name? Bob Ross, is that his name? Like beautiful, happy little shadows. And to make it even more realistic, you can change the blending mode to multiply. A blending mode is just crazy math behind the scenes that helps you blend layer together. The reason I said teaches is because it came to my mind that if you want to learn more about blending modes, you can go into my website, photoshoptrainingchannel.com, and I have this blending modes explained article. As you can see, it's got a lot of shares, and I go through each individual blending mode. There's a video tutorial on it, and then all this stuff that I wrote about how each one of those blending modes works. And also, if you forget about my name or website, if you just type in blending modes on Google, the first one is Adobe, then Wikipedia, and then me. So I was unfortunate not to beat Wikipedia and Adobe, but the third one is me. So you can click on that and then check out the blending modes to see how they all work. So you can check them out. But anyway, so notice that with the normal blending mode, you get these non-realistic shadows. But if I change the blending mode to multiply, it just looks a little more realistic. See that? So now you would just try to paint in the shadows in here. I'm using the left and right bracket keys in the keyboard to adjust the brush size. And here we are, just painting those shadows in. Kenna told me I had time, so I'm taking my time now to apply these shadows, like so. And, you know, this is all subjective. You don't have to follow the poster. You don't have to follow me. Like, do it however you like, however it makes you happy. But, you know, I was trying to follow the poster. And if you make a mistake like that, just undo and try again. Not a big deal. Actually, I just thought of something cool to show you guys. So and I'll do it in a new document just so that it looks. Actually, this is like the second time I use this computer, which is why I don't have anything saved here yet. But anyway, in this new document, I'm just going to create a new layer and I'm just going to paint, right? So when you paint, and let me select a different brush so I can show you guys something cool. I don't know which one will be a good one. Okay, I guess this will probably work. Okay, this will probably work. So when you paint, right? You paint. And if you make a mistake and you want to erase, what most people do is go into the erase tool and then erase. But then notice now it just doesn't look like it's part of the same brush, right? So what Adobe did recently is they added a way that when you paint, you can erase with the same brush. So if you hold the tilde key, that's the key to the left of the number 1, you know, that little Enya thing right under the escape key, and you click and drag. As you're holding that key, you erase with the same brush. See that? See that? And I know what some of you may be thinking, like, oh, that's not fair. I have, you know, Photoshop CS6 or 5 or something, and I want to be able to do that. Well, if that's the case, if you have an older version of Photoshop that is not the latest release, you can actually sort of hack Photoshop so that it does the same thing. If you go into mode and select clear, right up here, clear, you can do the same thing. See that? Clear. So normal paints, change the blending mode to clear, and you can do the same thing. But in the latest and greatest release, all you have to do is hold the tilde key and do that. It's a little faster. So if you're in an older version, you can still do it. Just take some time to going into the drop down, selecting clear, and coming back. But anyway, that was like a long-winded explanation as to how you could erase if you make a mistake. So for example, if you're creating a shadow here and then you just go overboard, instead of undoing like I did earlier, you can hold the tilde key and then just erase like so. So it's totally up to you how you do it. But anyway, I'm just going to continue painting. See, like I went too far into his nose there, so I probably will come back there and use the tilde key to smooth that out. So spend your time making these shadows. So here we are, we're going like so. And I'll do one more right down here. And something else I wanted to show you is, like, for example, if your image has a highlight like mine does there, that shadow doesn't look too realistic. And I'll even make it darker, even though I probably wouldn't like it darker, but just to prove a point. If you have a shadow, right, and then like the image down there has a highlight, it just looks weird. So in some ways, it's almost better to keep the highlight. And what you can do is you can double click to the side of the layer and then use the blend if option. Blend if allows you to show or hide pixels based on their luminosity. So what I can do is tell Photoshop the underlying layer, so the layer that is below the one that is currently selected, I can click and drag to the left and see how it just hides the brightest pixels, but it looks terrible. So what you can do is hold Alt on Windows, Option on the Mac, and click to split those in half and create a smoother transition. See that? See? This is before and this is after. So you can kind of fine tune it till you find something that that works, like a happy medium. Totally up to you. So this is an option that you have if you have like a really bad highlight and it doesn't look correctly. Obviously, this shadow looks terrible because I like overemphasize it to show the technique. But, you know, oh, here's another thing you can do. So like in this case, I want to just make that shadow not as intense. What you can do is you can erase using the tilde key technique that I showed you. And then you can use something super cool called fade. In Photoshop, if you go into edit and fade, you'll either adjust the opacity or blending mode of the previous thing that you did. In this case, use the brush tool. So then I can fade the erase, the brush stroke erase there. So I can just adjust how much of it I want to erase, all of it or just a tiny little bit, totally up to you. So that's another way in which you can fine tune the shadows. Cool. And then what you will do now is do the same thing, create another layer, Control-Alt-G, Command-Option-G on the Mac. I'm not going to name it, but that's also shadows, and that is for the inside shapes. So what you want to do is select that color and then just find like a really darker version of that, and also change it to multiply, and then just basically do the same thing. Try to figure out how the shadows would look in those inside shapes, like so. Just take your time adjusting those shapes. Pretty cool stuff. Let me now move up to the new file, or the file that's like next on the list, and I think is this one here. All shadows done. Cool. Actually, I think I could have probably done the whole thing without doing this whole cooking show, you know, thing. Let me see. So what we're gonna do now is try to make it seem as if there's like shadows and highlights affecting the image. Oh, and actually, you know what? I should have left the other one. That one's already there. See, I got ahead of myself. So, and I closed the other file. So what I'll do is I'll just figure out where that is. That one's here. Yeah. So I'll just delete that what I did there. So that way you guys could see how that was created. Sorry about that. Cool. So this is where we were in the previous example, right here, right? So I made the shadows, and I want to make it seem as if this face mask, those strips, have some depth to them. So what you can do is go into this layer here, the one that's controlling the caps and the strips, double click to the side of it to create a layer style on them, and you can just click on bevel and emboss, and you can use like a yellowish color to create the highlights and this darker brown for the shadows, and make sure that you have soften set to 0, and you can adjust the size. See that? And what I'll do is I'll zoom in so that you can see what I'm doing. So I'll zoom in, then I'll go back in there, and I can adjust the depth. See that? See how it now has an edge? By the way, the highlight mode is on overlay and the shadow mode is on normal, and you can just adjust the intensity accordingly, whatever you think will work best for your image. So then that just makes it feel more like it's three-dimensional. So something like that, and you can just adjust it any way that you want. When you're done, you can press OK. But then you're gonna think to yourself, hey man, yeah, but now we have these crazy lines going here and it doesn't really match the composite, you know, like what do we do? No problem. In Photoshop, you can actually take a layer style and turn it into a layer and then apply a layer mask to it. So that's what we'll do. You can right click on the FX icon and click on Create Layers. So once again, layer style icon, create layers. That puts those layer styles into their own layers. See that? See the highlight there? That's the highlight. I'll zoom in. Highlight on this layer, shadow on this layer. Super cool. So now I can just add a layer mask here, a layer mask on the one on top. Let's work with the highlights first. So I'm in the highlight layer, which is this one here, and I can just come in there and paint with black to hide on my layer mask. With a layer mask, black reveals, white conceals. So I'm painting with black, I'm making sure that I'm hiding those pixels. If I want to bring back those pixels, then I can paint with white. So I'm just gonna hide the highlights, and with the shadows, I can paint with black like so. And now I have total control of these highlights and shadows because they're regular pixel layers, right? So what I can do is I can click on this icon here that locks the transparent pixels. So I can't create new pixels in that layer. I can only adjust the ones that are there, change the ones that are there. So I can come in here and with like the dodge tool, I can make like a highlight somewhere. Is this the right layer? Yeah, so make a highlight, maybe even go there. So see that now it's a highlight, or I can go there and make it even darker with the burn tool. So totally up to you how you can adjust this. You can also paint, right? If you wanted to, you can just come in there and paint. See how I'm painting in there? Maybe select a darker color to just create stronger shadows in certain areas. See that? Or maybe instead of a shadow, I want to highlight there for whatever reason. I can do that as well. So complete control if you separate the layer style into its own layer. I didn't really want to do any of that. I'm just showing you that you have those options in case you need them in your project. Time for another time check. Ken, I just want to know.
Yeah, it's we've got about 15 minutes left, so
okay,
you're
cool.
good to go.
Yeah. Sounds good. So the one thing that I really didn't talk about, and that was probably because I was going a little fast, but before I move on into the next step, I really wanted to show you the reason why I used a vector path as opposed to a regular layer mask. And some of you may be thinking, well, a layer mask is easier to make. Yeah, it's easier to make, but the reason that I did it was so that I could adjust it, right? So now that I have my composite here, if I wanted to, I could come back in there and I selected the Curvature Pen tool, hold Control, Command and the Mac, click on the path, and see how I can adjust it. So maybe I want to hide the hair. I could come in here and just give it a different type of curvature, so you have total control over how you adjust the path, right? So you can just keep adjusting it any way that you want, like so. So that's the reason why we're using a vector path as opposed to a layer mask. It just keeps things editable. They're sharp edges. So I just remember that I didn't mention that earlier, and I wanted to point it out before we got to the step. The reason that I didn't do it in this layer is that I was already too far into the composite. I can still edit it, of course, but then that means that I would have to, redo the highlights and shadows. So once you get to that highlight and shadow area of the composite, you kind of do have to commit to what you have or just redo that last part. So cool. So now the next thing that we need to do is create a curves adjustment layer, and we're just going to apply a color style to the entire image. So I'm going to change the curves adjustment layer to luminosity, because if I leave it at normal, watch what happens. I'm just going to create an extreme adjustment, right? This is an extreme adjustment. See that? See, I just made an extreme adjustment. It saturates the image. So when you apply a curves adjustment to an image, you're going to change the saturation. But if you just want to affect the brightness of the image, the luminosity of the image without affecting saturation, what you can do is switch it over into luminosity, and see that? Luminosity. Only the luminance values, not saturation. So that's one of the reasons. And actually, you can probably tell better here. If I just make it really dark, see how overly saturated the reds are? Luminosity, not saturated, just darker, normal, super saturated. So that's why I'm changing it to luminosity. And what I'm going to do is just make it a little bit darker, clicking and dragging this white point. The curves adjustment layer sort of works like a dimmer switch, like in your house, you may have a dimmer switch. If you drag up, there's more light in the room. If you drag down, there's less light. So see, click on a point, drag up, more light, drag down, less light. And we're going to talk about channels in a moment. But for now, I'm just going to click and drag this point down to just make it a little darker and maybe give it a little more contrast like that. And I'm going to create one more curves adjustment layer, and this one is going to help us control the color. So I'm going to go into the red channel, again dragging up, more light, dragging down, less light. But with a channel, dragging up gives you more light in the channel that you're in, and the red channel gives us red light. If we drag down, it'll give us less of that light and more of the opposite color of that channel. So the opposite of red is, in the chat, somebody's going to type it up, I'm sure, cyan. Yes, I can't read the chat, otherwise I would have waited. But I have the point dragged down below that center line, so it makes it into cyan. With green, you obviously get green if you go up, and magenta if you go down. And with blue, you get blue going up and yellow going the other way. So now you can color grade this any way that you want, totally up to you. So in this case, maybe I'll just bring it down a little bit, bring the reds down to get a little cyan. The real poster, it has like a green tint to it. So I'm going to click and drag up and give it some green in there, maybe not too much. And with the blues, I could probably maybe go down and just add a little bit of yellow just to get that color grade that's similar to the one in the original movie or TV show poster. And one of the things that I'm not liking right now is his skin. His skin is just looking too orange. And I think that the problem is because the original one here is just not my style of skin tone for this. So what I'll do is I'll just create a hue and saturation adjustment layer right on top of the faces images, but below the color grade. And I can just select reds because that's where you'll probably find the skin tones, and just bring the saturation down a bit. And you can also shift the hues if you need to. So when I bring that back, it looks a little bit better. It's too orange without it, and with it, that is probably a little too desaturated. So I'll bring back a little more saturation. It's, to my eye, it just seemed like it was too orange, but you may like it. So before and after. What I'm gonna do now is click on the layer on top and press Control-Alt-Shift-E, Command-Option-Shift-E on the Mac, or you can smash your forehead up against the keyboard, and I'm sure you'll hit those keyboard shortcuts. Again, Control-Alt-Shift-E on Windows, Command-Option-Shift-E on the Mac, and that takes basically a screenshot, so to speak, of everything that's in your layers panel and puts it in a new layer. And the reason that I'm doing this is so that I could do some final adjustments to this without putting everything into a smart object. I could have put everything into a smart object and do the same thing, but recently I've been working with larger files that putting everything into a smart object just seems crazy and it slows down my computer. So my workaround to that was that you could just create a smart object, a composite smart object out of one layer, and then with this smart object you apply the final effects. But then if you change your mind and want to change something, like, so maybe I come in here, right, and then I decide, you know what, maybe I want to make, maybe I do want that overly saturated orange on his skin, right? I changed my mind. I can just do another one of those screenshots, Control-Alt-Shift-E, Command-Option-Shift-E on the Mac, and then I can place that in here. And I don't even need to do that, actually. What I really need to do is press Control-A to select all, copy merge, and then open this smart object, and I can just paste that in there, and then that's what we'll use for the final composite. But anyway, that's just why I did this, in case you were wondering why I didn't put everything into a smart object. So with my final adjustment layer, what I'm going to do is go into Filter, Camera Raw Filter, and I'm just going to apply some Camera Raw adjustments. Maybe I can add just a tiny bit more green in the tint, add a little bit more contrast, maybe brighten up the shadows a little bit, and reduce the highlights to give them more detail in the highlights. Texture just makes the texture pop. Clarity is contrast and edge pixels. Vibrance is smart saturation. It protects already saturated pixels and skin tones. Maybe a little more. Now I'm going to zoom in to the 100% view and go into the sharpening. When you apply sharpening, you want to be at 100% because any other view would be misleading. So you really want to see what you're doing. And I'm just going to increase the sharpening, right? And when you sharpen something, you obviously can see what's going on. But if you really want to be smart about your sharpening, what you should do is hold the Alt key on Windows, the Option key on the Mac, and click on the masking slider. This is just a mask, right? So white reveals, black conceals. Everything is white, so the effect is applied to the entire image. But if I drag to the right, Photoshop starts finding the edges, and notice how the background disappears. So now there is no sharpening effect applied to the background, which is exactly what I want. So then I'll release here, and that will give me a better sharpening effect to my subject without sharpening the background. And what I'll do is I'll right click, fit in view, go into the effects tab and add a little bit of a vignette. I think the original movie poster or TV show poster had a vignette. And those of you that know me know that I like grain. So I'm going to add a little tiny bit of grain, just a hint. Go into the 100% view, fit on view, and press OK. So let me just compare that to the one that I spent a little more time without talking, but it looks very similar. I actually like the colors on this one better. I spent more time. This one's too saturated, too orange, but that's what I mean. You need to spend some time fine-tuning the adjustment layers that you make. Obviously, when you're talking and trying to be creative, it's a little bit more difficult, but I think it came out close enough and you guys got the idea of how this particular technique works. I think we're good with time, right?
Absolutely. Look at that. Under an hour recreating the movie poster or the TV show poster for the hit show Prodigal Son, which again, I hadn't watched either, but when I went and looked at it, it looks like it has kind of like a cultish following. So
cool.
Check it out.
And it's a really cool poster. So I'm glad we got a chance to recreate it. Again, this is part of my Copycat Wednesday series on my YouTube channel. You can see it that I did a Flash one, the Lightroom splash screen, and the perfume movie poster, which again I hadn't seen, but somebody recommended the movie poster to me, so I made it. So in the chat, somebody will let us know if it's good or not. Make sure that if you do come into my YouTube channel, you click on the subscribe button, the notification button. If you're already subscribed, thank you so much. I appreciate the subscriptions. Also, Instagram, JR from PTC. My website, this is where you can find that blending mode tutorial that I talked about. And if you want to follow along, if you're joining in late and you missed it, you can find the 2 images that I used on stock.adobe.com, and then you can put in the number that you see here. I'm not going to read it again. You can just rewind the video and then you'll find it. But those are the 2 images there. Or you can zoom in and look at the URL. Very easy, stock.adobe.com/ and then that number. Cool.
Awesome, Jesus. Thank you so much for coming on and doing this. You know, it's like you said in the beginning, it's one thing to watch a tutorial. It's another thing to see somebody create something from start to finish. So such a great way to learn. I just want to give you a couple of comments. Lisa Carney says, you did an amazing job. And thank you, Lisa, who is another instructor here on CreativeLive, for tuning in the whole time. And Carla Rossi says, no matter what Jesus teaches, I go away with so much new knowledge, tips and tricks, and inspiration. So good at what he does. Thank you, Jesus.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla, for tuning in. And everybody, you can check out what is coming up on creativelive.com/TV. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter right now, you can head over and see the upcoming schedule. You can also give us suggestions on what you want to see. Again, Creative Live TV is all about entertaining and inspiring and connecting us all together. So we're super happy to have that for you. And like Jesus said, he's got over 1 million followers on his subscribers on YouTube. And so clearly he's doing something right. He's also got a number of classes here on Creative Live that you can check out. When you are a subscriber to our Creator Pass, you get access to all of those classes, as well as 1,500 plus classes here on Creative Live. So Jesus, thank you again. Any final parting words for everyone?
Well, yeah, one thing actually, I want to encourage everybody to try this out. And if you try it out, make sure that you use the hashtag PTCVids, because I often check for that hashtag to see what you guys do. So I love to see that people are creating with something I'm doing. A like and a comment is great, but when I actually see like a tangible photo, like, like something that somebody made, I'm like, oh, wow, that's super cool. So make sure that you either tag me or use that hashtag. I don't know if there's a hashtag that could use for Creative Live that, that you guys could see that are doing something for Creative Live. Maybe just tag Creative Live, on whatever you guys create, but it'd be cool to see the work that you guys do.
That's perfect. And also, I know you, like you said, you take suggestions from the community for upcoming Copycat Wednesday. So where should people do that?
Yeah, so YouTube channel is a place to do it on any one of the Copycat Wednesday videos. I usually, for example, I think I've done it at all. But to be completely frank with you, this was the only one that hasn't been a suggestion. So they all have been suggested. And I usually in the comments say, what should my next Copycat Wednesday be? You can see that here. And then people would leave me comments. Some people message me on Facebook. Some people message me on Instagram. But the place that I really want to make it like the official place to leave your suggestions should be a Copycat Wednesday video. And so that's my goal, just to do things that you guys want to see that I also think would be cool to recreate. And try to be just a little mindful as to like what you suggest. Some people are suggesting things that would take me like 20 hours, to do without talking, So it's got to fit within an hour, give or take.
Awesome. Well, final comment from Cloudy, who says, amazing. Thank you, Jesus.
Awesome.
So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. A big thank you to Jesus Ramirez, and we will see you all next time here on Creative Live. Bye, Jesus. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Kenna. Bye, guys. Thank you so much.